The soft murmur of conversation and the clink of glasses filled the air at the upscale Seattle restaurant. The lighting was soft, creating an intimate atmosphere, the kind of place where every dish looked like a masterpiece, and every guest seemed to exude confidence. Nadia Williams, however, didn't feel confident at all. Her reflection in the polished window outside reminded her of her reality. Her dress was second-hand, her shoes were worn, and her nerves were shot. But she had promised Sophie, her best friend, that she'd follow through with the blind date. Clutching her phone, Nadia stepped inside, scanning the tables. Table, 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 she muttered under her breath, her heart pounding. Her gaze landed on a sharply dressed man sitting alone at a table near the back. His dark hair was neatly styled, and he seemed engrossed in his phone. That must be him, she thought. Taking a deep breath, she walked over, forcing a bright smile. Hi, you must be Daniel. I'm Nadia, nice to meet you. Lucas Gray looked up, startled. He blinked at her, momentarily at a loss for words. Hi Nadia. Misreading his confusion as shyness, she slid into the seat across from him, her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. Oh, I know this is awkward. Blind dates are weird, right? Sophie told me you might be a little reserved, so don't worry, I can talk enough for both of us. Lucas opened his mouth to correct her but hesitated. His business associate had just texted to cancel their meeting, and something about Nadia's earnest smile made him pause. She was nothing like the polished socialites and calculated networkers he was used to. Instead, she seemed genuine. He decided to play along, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Right, blind dates are something else. Nadia laughed nervously, taking a sip of water. Tell me about it. Sophie's been trying to set me up for months, but I've been too busy. Work, you know. What do you do? Lucas asked, curious despite himself. I'm a barista, Nadia admitted, fiddling with the edge of her napkin. Not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills, well, most of them anyway. Enough about me. What do you do? Lucas hesitated. I work in finance. Finance? That's cool, Nadia said brightly. Like investments and stuff, something like that. Lucas said, his smile widening. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Her straightforwardness was refreshing, even if it was based on a misunderstanding. The conversation flowed surprisingly well after that. Nadia shared stories from her shifts at the cafe, her struggles with rent, and her dream of one day opening her own design studio. Lucas found himself laughing more than he had in months. Her enthusiasm was contagious. You're not what I expected, Nadia said suddenly, her tone thoughtful. Lucas raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Well, Sophie said you were quiet, Nadia explained, her cheeks flushing. But you're easy to talk to. Lucas chuckled softly. You're easy to talk to, too. Nadia beamed at the compliment, her nerves easing further. She was about to ask him more about his finance work when her phone buzzed. Hey, Nadia, where are you? I'm at table 7, looking forward to meeting you, Daniel. Her heart sank as she reread the message slowly. She looked up at Lucas, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. You're not Daniel, are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas' smile faltered, guilt flickering in his eyes. No, I'm not. Nadia's stomach churned as the reality set in. Oh my God, she muttered, standing abruptly. I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table. This is so embarrassing. Wait, Lucas said, standing too. Nadia, it's okay. But she was already grabbing her coat and bolting for the door, her face flushed. Lucas watched her go, a strange mix of regret and curiosity swirling in his chest. He had planned to correct her from the start, but now he found himself wondering if he'd ever see her again, and why the thought of never seeing her again bothered him so much. Nadia hurried through the restaurant's entrance, her heart pounding in her chest. She kept her eyes focused on the door, desperate to escape the embarrassment. Her mind raced. How could she have made such a mistake? She couldn't remember the last time she had been so mortified. As she reached the door, a voice called out behind her. "Nadia!" She froze, her hand on the handle. The voice wasn't loud, but it carried with an urgency that stopped her in her tracks. Turning, she saw Lucas standing near the entrance, looking conflicted. He was still smiling, though the hint of amusement had been replaced by something softer, more genuine. I'm so sorry," Nadia stammered, her face flushed with shame. I didn't mean to. Look, it's no big deal," Lucas interrupted, stepping forward. "It's just a misunderstanding." "But it's embarrassing," Nadia whispered, her eyes flicking to the floor. I don't even know what I was thinking. You must think I'm an idiot." "No," Lucas said quickly, his voice warm and reassuring. "You're not an idiot. Honestly, I'm glad you came over. You're refreshing. I just never expected to meet someone like you here." Nadia looked up, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. She hesitated before responding. "You really don't mind?" "I don't," Lucas replied, taking a step closer. "I mean, sure, it's a little awkward. But it's nothing we can't laugh about." Nadia smiled weakly, still feeling a little unsure. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to gauge whether this situation could still be salvaged. But before she could speak again, Lucas added, "How about we start over?" She blinked, her surprise evident. "Start over?" "Yeah, why not?" Lucas said, his tone light. "I mean, we're already here. And I'd really like to get to know you better, if that's okay." Nadia looked at him for a moment, taking in the earnestness in his eyes. She couldn't quite believe he was being so kind after the awkward mess she had just made. But maybe, just maybe, there was something about him that made her want to give it another try. She nodded slowly, her nerves settling as she took a step back toward him. "You sure you're not just being polite?" she asked with a small laugh, her voice tinged with skepticism. "Wouldn't be the first time I've made a fool of myself," Lucas said with a wink, breaking the tension. "But this time, I'm serious." Nadia couldn't help but smile at his honesty. It was rare to find someone so down-to-earth in this kind of setting, and even rarer to find someone willing to let go of the social expectations of perfection. She felt her initial embarrassment slowly fade as she met his gaze. "Okay," she said, her voice more confident now. "Starting over it is." They returned to their table, both of them now laughing over the awkwardness of the situation. The conversation flowed easily, and soon, they were sharing stories of their childhoods, talking about their dreams, and laughing at the absurdities of life. Nadia found herself more comfortable than she had been in a long time. As the night wore on, Nadia began to forget that this had started as a mistake. What she found instead was someone who genuinely listened, who seemed more interested in who she was than in impressing her with his own life. And that felt rare, special. By the time dessert arrived, Nadia had almost completely relaxed. She even found herself teasing Lucas about his business finance work, which, to her amusement, he'd barely explained beyond the vague answer earlier. "So, are you like a big-time investment banker, or what?" Nadia asked playfully, twirling her spoon in the dessert. Lucas chuckled. "Not exactly. More like a consultant for wealthy clients who want to make their money work for them. But I'll let you in on a secret. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. You'd be surprised how many people think we just sit around all day counting money." "Oh, I can't even imagine," Nadia said sarcastically, her eyes twinkling. "What's the most ridiculous thing someone's asked you to do?" Lucas thought for a moment before answering. "Someone once asked me to help them invest in a private island. I mean, sure, I could have helped them buy it, but it's not like you just wake up one morning and decide you want to own a piece of the ocean." Nadia laughed, genuinely amused. "Some people really have no concept of reality, huh?" Lucas nodded, a knowing look on his face. "Exactly. It's like they think money can solve all their problems. But the truth is, it's not always that simple. There was a pause between them, a moment of mutual understanding. Nadia looked down at her plate, then back at him, feeling a strange sense of comfort settle in her chest. "Maybe money isn't everything, but it definitely helps," she said softly. "I mean, I'm just trying to get by. But I have dreams, you know? Big ones." "I'm sure you do," Lucas said, his tone warm. "And I think you'll get there." She smiled, feeling a surge of hope at his words. "Thanks, Lucas." As they finished dessert, Lucas made a suggestion. "I know this night didn't go exactly as planned, but how about we plan a real date? When you're free?" Nadia hesitated. The thought of taking another step into the unknown, into the potential of something new, felt both exciting and terrifying. But when she looked at him, she knew that this was a chance she wanted to take. "Yeah, I'd like that," she said, her voice steady. The night ended on a much warmer note than either of them could have expected, and as they exchanged goodbyes, Nadia couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this mistake would lead to something worth remembering. The following week, Nadia found herself standing in front of her closet, staring at the limited options of her wardrobe. She had agreed to meet Lucas again, and tonight was their official first date. The memory of her initial mix-up still made her cheeks flush, but Lucas had been nothing but kind about it. She had spent the last few days replaying their conversation, marveling at how easy it was to talk to him. Finally settling on a simple blue dress that brought out the color in her eyes, Nadia grabbed her coat and headed out. Lucas had suggested a more casual setting this time, and she was grateful. Fancy restaurants weren't really her scene. Instead, they were meeting at a cozy little bistro tucked away in a quieter part of the city. When she arrived, Lucas was already waiting outside. He looked just as polished as before, but there was something more relaxed about him now. His blazer was paired with dark jeans, and his smile was warm and inviting. "Nadia," he greeted, stepping forward. "You look great." "Thanks," she said, feeling her nerves settle a little. "You don't look too bad yourself." He grinned, opening the door for her. "Shall we?" The bistro was charming, with soft lighting and an eclectic mix of decor. They were seated in a corner booth, and the atmosphere felt intimate without being overwhelming. As they settled in, the conversation began to flow as easily as it had during their first meeting. "So," Lucas said after they ordered, leaning back in his seat, "tell me more about this dream of yours to open a design studio." Nadia hesitated, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's nothing fancy," she said modestly. "Just a small space where I can create and maybe even teach others. I love the idea of making art accessible to people who might not think they have the talent for it." Lucas nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's a great idea. Do you have a plan for how to make it happen?" "Not really," Nadia admitted with a sheepish smile. "Right now, it's just a dream. Between work and bills, it's hard to save up or even find the time to figure out the next steps." Lucas leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Have you ever thought about looking for investors? Or maybe starting small, like running workshops or selling your designs online?" She blinked at him, surprised by his genuine interest. "I guess I've thought about it, but it always felt out of reach, you know? Like who would take a chance on someone like me?" "I would," Lucas said simply. Her heart skipped a beat. "You're just saying that." "I'm not," he said, his tone serious. "I think you're talented, and more importantly, you're passionate. People like you are the ones who make things happen." Nadia didn't know how to respond. No one had ever believed in her dreams so openly before. It was both overwhelming and exhilarating. "Thanks," she said softly. "That means a lot." They continued talking, their connection growing stronger with each passing minute. Lucas shared stories about his life, opening up about the pressures of his work and the challenges of always having to put on a polished front. Nadia found herself surprised by how vulnerable he was willing to be, and she realized that beneath his composed exterior was someone who longed for authenticity as much as she did. As the night wore on, Lucas finally asked a question that had been on his mind since their first meeting. Nadia, why did you stay that night, even after you realized you were at the wrong table? She laughed, looking down at her empty plate. Honestly? I thought you seemed nice. And when you didn't tell me to leave right away, I figured, why not? He smiled, his eyes warm. I'm glad you stayed. Me too, she admitted, meeting his gaze. By the time they left the bistro, the city lights had cast a soft glow over the streets. Lucas walked Nadia to her bus stop, and as they stood there, the conversation lulled into a comfortable silence. Tonight was amazing, she said, breaking the quiet. It was, Lucas agreed, his hands in his pockets. We should do this again. I'd like that, she said, her voice tinged with genuine excitement. The bus arrived, and as she turned to board, Lucas hesitated before calling out, Nadia? She turned back, a questioning look on her face. Don't give up on that dream of yours, he said. You're closer to it than you think. Her heart swelled at his words. Thanks, Lucas. I'll remember that. As the bus pulled away, she couldn't help but smile. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary.